My name's Michelle Payne and I have with me Julian Griffin. We're talking about how you advertise yourself as looking for a team, and then what a team actually looks for, and then how do you practice as a team so that you get better just like the pros do. We were to be 3 today, but unfortunately James can't make it. So you've got Julian and I giving our talk today. We want to make it a little bit interactive, so if anyone has a question, there's a microphone over here to my right, and if you would like to ask a question, feel free. Let's talk about how you actually get onto a team. Julian, I don't know about your background. What's your background in getting onto teams?
Alright, so I'll introduce myself a bit first. So my name's Julian Griffin. I've been involved in esports pretty much my whole life. Mostly in Counter-Strike, started playing when the game first came out. Played Counter-Strike Source professionally, and then retired when I was 19. Took a bit of a hiatus, and then came back at 29 to start competing again. In that period in between, I started a software company, ended up selling that, and then started consulting around the world in organisational development, how to cultivate high-performing teams, financial management and operations issues. So when I came back, I thought I'd take some of those experiences and learnings and see if I can apply them to esports. So that's a bit of my background.
Julian and I met each other on a team together when he hired me to be the sports psych for his team. Was that the time that the first team back?
Yeah, that was the first team back after about a 10-year hiatus, and yeah, that's how I ended up getting introduced or acquainted with Dr. Michelle Payne. So I recognise that one of the biggest issues in developing a high-performing team, particularly when you have a lot of egos and you're competing at the highest level, is psychology. So I went out and looked for a sports psychologist, and that's how I found Dr. Michelle Payne.
Did you find there were many of us out there?
There weren't a lot, actually.
We're pretty new, I think, in the field, especially in esports.
Absolutely.
Alright, so one of the ways that you can start looking for joining a team is by obviously joining with your mates, and that's probably a good starting position. Whatever team you play with, you might as well try and enjoy yourself. You might, if you don't have a lot of mates out there in real life, you might just join lobbies and play the game and practice where others practice. And that's how you might get discovered. Or I find sometimes when I've got players on teams where they disband and suddenly they're looking for somewhere else to find a home, that if they sort of let themselves be known that they're looking for a new team, that they put like LFT in their in-game name somehow, or they sort of send a message that way, that's how they can sort of tell others that when they're practicing that they'll notice and they'll see that they're looking for another team. Other ways are that these days too, tournament organisers put out, usually have a Discord to join, and often one of the channels on the Discord tells them, or has a looking for teams channel, and that's another good way to try and make contacts with people. It's all about networking, I find. And then we get to the how do you make an LFT tweet? And so I want to show you a couple of examples of some good and some bad looking for teams tweets. And I have some suggestions here because a lot of my former teammates are currently looking for teams overseas, and they said, well, how do I do it? What do I look for? So I want to show you a couple of examples. So I've got 3 examples on the screen. The one on the top left is actually pretty good. It has the right sort of details. You want to be able to tweet that you're looking for a team. What are the sort of details that you're looking for? You know, what sort of experience have you got? What roles do you play? What sort of level you're already at? Maybe something about availability is good as well. So the top left one is actually not too bad, but it's very generic. It has a link to, in this case, a VLR page, so it's a Valorant player, so that would tell them the stats for that player. That's a good idea, but as I said, it looks very generic. If we look now to the one down below that, we've got the same sort of tweet, but it has much less information to it. it doesn't have quite enough information, I believe, and it also has a link, but you have to watch out for spelling mistakes. I'm the world's worst typist, as you know, Julian. So lots of my messages have lots of edited messages to them because I hate typos. But you have to make sure when you're putting out an LFT tweet, at least make sure all the words are spelled correctly. So that's a good thing. And then my example on the right-hand side is one that actually I recommended. So Harry here is he's one I recommended him doing this style. If he'd run it by me, I actually would have made him change a few things here, but I like the idea. It stands out because it's a picture and it looks a bit different from everyone else. It has the main information that you want to see on a looking forward tweet about experience and availability and what roles you play. But I would argue that maybe a readable font might be actually better, much easier to read. So there's some examples, but I'm trying to get my players, the ones I want to have jobs, to try and find a home where they're brought to the attention of the people who are as high up as possible, and to make their tweet a little bit memorable by having a picture in it. Do you look for anything in particular when you're looking for things that you notice?
To be honest with you, Michelle, I don't look at the LFT tweets. I think when I'm looking for players, the thing that I'm looking for is individual recommendations. So I'll seek out people that I know and trust and get an individual referral.
Often at your level too, you'd be playing with them, so you'd have an experience of playing with them, so you know what they were like as a potential teammate, the way they talk to each other and things like that.
Absolutely, and I think you'd know from working with me as well, Michelle, my preference is finding players that I think have the right attitude, not so much the right mechanics. So my sort of thinking is that you can teach anyone to shoot or to move, but you can't teach people how to care or want to put in that effort to be a good teammate.
Yep, good point. I'm in a funny experience at the moment where I've worked with a team recently where culture last time when on a team, this particular team, wasn't that great. There was sort of
Was that my team?
No, it wasn't. It was an international team. And so they wanted to go in a different direction by looking for players who would actually get on well together. And they all sort of bought players that they could afford, and they were mechanically quite good. And the team gets on really well, but they don't perform that well. But they get on really well, and it's quite difficult.
Well, you got to find the right balance as well, right? So it depends what you're looking for. If you want to be competing in the top 1%, there's no substitute for raw talent, unfortunately.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable competing in the top 10%, which I think people can get there with effort and development, I mean, that just takes time. So people need to be aligned on what their actual goals and objectives are for their team and have a realistic view of where their potential can take them.
Have you ever been on a team where the players really aren't that smart and they're hard to coach?
Absolutely.
I mean, I've heard you say just now that you can teach the mechanics stuff. It's really hard to teach that side, the game plans that get involved in. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I don't. For me as well, an interesting observation. I'd say there's a lot of cultural elements to that as well. So I've worked all over the world, not in esports, but in traditional businesses and developing performing teams that way. I actually find Australians the most difficult to develop. There's a real issue, in my opinion, in Australian culture where it's hard to give honest and raw feedback. People take it as an attack and it sort of stifles development. So I think one of the biggest things if you're looking for a team and you want it to be a high-performing team is find people who can accept criticism and that you have an environment where you can give criticism in a way that will lead to development.
I see some nodding here in our audience. So would you like to participate in our talk? There is a microphone over here. We'd love to hear some feedback from you. If you've ever been on a team, what did you look for when you were finding teammates? Or how did you choose your teammates? Thank you.
Hey, how you going? My name's Ty, and we probably have the biggest team in Australia in the Australian military. absolutely echo what you said about attitude. That is everything. You can teach anyone, you can teach a soldier how to move, shoot, how to behave, how to iron and clean themselves and whatnot, but attitude is number one. And the biggest, I guess, the hurdle that we're going through is this change of culture. Culture takes such a long time to actually to form, to install, and to actually normalise and perform, but it takes one small thing to actually ruin that. So it takes around a tenth of the time to destroy culture, but 10 times the amount to actually rebuild it as well. And echoing what you said about people who are not smart, and Australians as well. Australian soldiers are very tough, and we actually are renowned to be the best small army in the world. Is because we are that resilient, but that resilience is also has a double-edged sword. When you have feedback for them, they may potentially want to throw a punch at you, but you need to form it in such a way that it is actually improving them and actually in their favour as well. So all the points in esports and all selecting your team is transferable everywhere. And first-hand as well, I used to do a bit of esports management as well, and I think Australians are not horrible, just
Slower?
they're really good. But it takes time, they need to be rewarded, they need to have their KFC, their Dorito dust and their Mountain Dew topped up a bit, and a bit of love as well. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. Absolutely, lots of potential, and I'd like to echo what you're saying about culture as well. I've been involved in a number of cultural transformation programs, not in esports, but in business. The number one thing there, I would say, is that it needs to be driven top down. So you can roll it out, or one of the biggest mistakes that I see businesses make is they roll it out amongst the people who are supposed to implement it, and then it's not demonstrated amongst the top echelon. It will just never work.
So what does an org actually look for when they're looking for a player? I put in here, mechanically excellent is you need to be at a certain level to be able to perform at the level the org wants you to perform at. It's no good selecting players that are below that. So you have to have a certain level of mechanics at least. And then when you're talking to the team or to the org that you are potentially wanting to join, you want to check that everyone on the team has the same sort of ambition as you. It's no good if you're expecting to be you want to be tier 1 in the next year or so, and they have aspirations to be tier 1, but they practice so few days, or they're unable to practice as often as you would like to. It just doesn't work. So you've got to make sure everyone actually has the same ambition and the commitment and availability to actually carry out that, so that you can be as motivated as you want, but if you're held back by certain limitations of, I can only work certain hours or certain days, and you can't give the hours that's needed to be a tier 1 aspiring player, you're always going to be very frustrated, I think, and your teammates will be too. Julian, you were managing a full-time job as well as when you were playing. That must have been so hard. I was looking back on our scrim schedule. We started training and prac at 5:30 Adelaide time. 6 o'clock Adelaide. It's 5:30 in Adelaide time. How the hell did you manage a full-time work and starting at 5:30 and then trying to eat as well for a full night of scrims?
Well, it's an interesting question, but just to wind it back a bit, I'd say that goal alignment is absolutely important. And then to go on from there as well, I would say that if you're going to be elite, it's to the exclusion of all else. So if you're going to be the top player, the top soldier, the top business leader, the best husband or wife, the best father or mother, the best friend, that is to the exclusion of all else. If you want to be balanced, you can be okay at all those things, but you'll never be the best at those things. And I know you won't like me saying that, Michelle, because it can lead to unhealthy behaviours. So you're asking how I managed a full-time job and playing professionally as well. I wasn't prepared to give up my corporate job is the answer to that. So unfortunately, that means that I would never be the best player.
Right, so there's a price to pay.
There is a price to pay. If you want to compete at the upper echelon of esports, it is to the exclusion of all those things that I mentioned as well. So a healthy relationship, healthy family, spending times with friends and family, potentially health and eating. Unfortunately, it is very easy to compromise on those things if you are ambitious to compete at the top of the top.
Right. The other thing that you want to look for too is that if you're if you have a particular play style, the way that you play the game, you want to make sure the team you're joining has also got the similar sort of play style to you as well, because again, if you're not meshing together nicely, then one or both of you are going to be frustrated in the way, you won't be able to progress as fast as you are wanting to. But the next point about taking feedback, giving constructive feedback, and do you have any comments on that one, Julian?
I mean, it's tough, right? No one likes to be told or hear feedback that they can do things better, or potentially the way they're approaching certain things have cost their teams rounds or events or opportunities. It is tough. It's a tough thing to manage. I think one of the things that you introduced to my team, Michelle, was the idea about debriefing at the end of every practice session, at the end of every event. I think that is super important. An environment where everyone speaks frankly and candidly about what their perception is of what happened and where the areas for improvement are, that absolutely drives a high performance culture. Right,
so we're going to be looking at my debrief document in a little while. I'll show everyone how it works. The last bit is a bit nebulous, chemistry. How do you work out, whether you've got a good relationship with the rest of your teammates? So what's the vibe, I guess, is the way to look at it. So if I have a look at the next slide. Okay, so what does having good chemistry actually look like? On a team, when you're trialing players, you obviously don't get a chance to see them through a long period of time. No one wants to trial with players for a long time because it's very wearing, isn't it, to try and find a new player, because it's not just that player you're trialing today. You might have 3 or 4 on your list that you're working through, and it's really hard work for a team to sort of be up and giving them a fair shot. But anyway, what we're looking for usually when a trialee comes along is that they actually have good energy, they're well prepared, they encourage their teammates in some way, they don't go quiet when the going gets tough. And so if we can put them in situations maybe where they get tested a little bit under pressure, let's say we have the chance to play an official with our trialee, that's a really great opportunity to see what they might be like under pressure. If you're playing it just in scrims, you don't really get a chance to see exactly what they're like. You can infer it, but you hope your decision is made that actually they are the right sort of fit for us. But one of the things about having good chemistry is that, is the player vocal enough? I think that's one thing we're actually looking for. We don't want players to be silent, we want them to be contributing members. So they speak up when they notice something that the team could do better, like in our debrief document we're going to look at shortly, or they give proactive comms, so not just the very mere basics, but actually gave more information that's actually usable for our IGL to make some plans. One of the things we also look for in our teams is that they're actually smart enough to be able to give mid-round and end-round comms, so that they group everyone together and check the utility and make sure that they've got a plan to go in and do the retake. And lastly, and the big one, is kept negativity off comms. So one of the things that I'm really keen about in my teams is to make sure that no one is negatively affecting the vibes. So anyone that has some frustration, they have to mute themselves, or preferably train them not to have negativity. It's not easy to do. So yeah, not to sound disappointed. And the reason is, it's not just that it affects that person themselves, but it actually has a compounding effect on other people, and it can really affect performance when your teammates think, oh, that person, I'm not sure I can trust them at the moment because they're distracted and not playing well, or they're upset with themselves. Maybe they're upset with me, and so you have to be able to just keep negativity off comms and keep the vibe positive if you can.
So one of the other things that's not really touched on there, but when I'm looking for players as well, I have it in my mind as to whether I want a leader or a good contributor. And I mentioned before about there'll be a natural ability as to how good some mechanics are. I sort of believe that's the same in leadership as well. Of course, leadership is a trait that you can teach, but some people will naturally be better at it than others. And when I'm putting together a team composition, I don't want too many leaders in my team either. One of the things that I select for is ego and confidence as well. I want everyone in the server at any given time to think that they, individually in the team, are the best in the team, and that can be super tough. So I don't want a team of 5 players who all think they're the best and who all are prepared to lead that group, because it's just going to cause issues.
But I want a team that's smart as well. And so capable of stepping up when needed, but recognising there is actually only one leader in the team.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I prefer the chain of command and authoritarian style leadership as well, if you're looking for quick results.
Tell us a bit about that, please. What do you mean by that?
Well, you can get quite academic in this field as well. There's a number of different leadership styles. I think in high pressure situations where you're looking for organised, quick results, a understanding of who's giving the orders and that everyone must follow it regardless, yields the best results. That has been academically proven, unfortunately. It's not the only leadership style. There's coercive leadership, there's bringing people along, like following, there's training and developing, but for sure authoritarian leadership, in my opinion, gives the best results in top level competitive play.
Yep. Alright, so this is a document that we used when we were looking for, or we're trialling a player. This is back from one of my Valorant teams very early on. And what we did, when we trial our players, we want to make sure that we're not just making a snap judgment based on who we saw last. You know, recency effect and primacy effect. So we want to make sure it's fair for everybody. So we had a spreadsheet worked out, and each of our players had a coloured line, and we rated our trialees on several key performance indicators. And the first one of those is on shooting ability. And then we had a whole lot of other stuff to do with vibes and what sort of comms they had and all sorts of stuff like that. But we ended up doubling the value of our shooting column to make it more balanced. And I think we sort of chose wisely our players that way. So I think having some sort of way to record and measure each person somewhat objectively at least makes the comparison between players a bit easier. So once you're in a team, you've got to be able to practice properly and know when practice is on. So I always like to create a scrim schedule, and I create a Google sheet. And the reason is that, a lot of players, a lot of teams just use maybe Discord, and they put up daily or sometimes weekly what the schedule is. And I'd like to give a bit more notice than that, so I've actually got a yearly one, and we just hide the cells when we need to. But I want my teams to know, what's coming up. So I highlight in neon yellow when the officials are, so we know planning-wise how many weeks or days we've got until we need to perform at our best. And then also I'm very keen to know everybody's birthdays, because it's great for team culture to be able to celebrate at the right time. So maybe there's someone who wants to have a day off that time for a big party. That's understandable. We can schedule around it. So we know in advance what's going on. I'm someone who just likes to know what's going on. You know me, I'm a control freak. All right, so in the scrim schedule, I also like to put in how the team is going. So we have team results, and a lot of people won't necessarily have the luxury of someone who's able to do that, but I wanted to show you how I did it. And for this example coming up, it's a CS team. It's actually our old CS team. I colour code the maps, and I colour code these days the results, so we can see which ones we practice most or least. So this is one from our old team at 8 ballers, and we practiced 5 days a week, and we had 2 days off to be normal people. A lot of teams don't necessarily pay attention to the days off, but I'm really keen to avoid burnout if we can. And so trying to choose 2 days that suit everybody. If sometimes members of our teams are studying, and it has to, the day off has to be on a certain day that fits with their studies. But in our team, we didn't have that problem. We chose Friday and Saturday because they're days when normal people have days off, and so I'm trying to encourage my players to have a social life as well, as much as possible. So we would train Sunday through to Thursday, and we'd have some theory sessions and probably 3 or 4 scrims each night. And you can see in here I've color-coded our maps and put in the results so that if I was looking back and I wanted to see how we were doing on a particular map or against a particular team, the results are all here in one page on the scrim schedule. So I found it handy. I don't know whether you did.
No, absolutely. And I think sort of what you're describing as well as being organised, planning, implementing process so that it can become repeatable and observable, and it's not as subjective. Sometimes you mentioned recency bias. When you have a slump of poor results that accumulate at the end, it's easy to get into your mind and think, oh, our team's terrible, we just keep losing. If you have something that you can go and reflect on, and you can say, well, actually, we're just performing poorly recently because we've changed this or we're trying this. If you look over here, you can see the progress we've made. That is super important from a psychological perspective as well.
Right. I think I first implemented this one when I had a team that went from Australia over to the US, and we were sort of practicing using Australian meta, and when we travelled over to North America, and the game was totally different. And to understand, how the game plan was changing, and you're right. It's being able to see it on paper like this. You can see the improvement and just the quality of the teams we were up against. It made such an enormous difference to our mentality to be able to see, we are actually improving over time. It's not too bad. Right. So the next thing is that we have to be able to be available when our officials are on. I had one of my players recently join a team. He was looking for a team. He joined a team. He thought that he had the great good vibe with the team. Everything was fantastic. He was all set to be signed, and suddenly they worked out that he wasn't available at the times when they needed for officials, which is a crucial mistake. So he was then looking for a team once again. But you need to be available.
So you'd say that's one of the non-negotiables when searching for a teammate.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter how good you are, if you can't be available when we need to play, we can't.
Sorry, not this time. That's right, another time maybe. So you need to practice enough times that it meets your expectations. So another thing he wanted to do was to look for, he wanted to step up from maybe tier 2 to tier 1 or tier 3 to tier 2. He had to look for people who were already in that environment and try and, who had the same sort of ambition that he wanted to be. So you'd be hoping to practice probably 5 days a week, 2 days off to be a normal person, and then we would try to think of, if you're a student, because esports is actually covering quite a wide range of titles and ages. So I'm thinking of my Rocket League team now, where if you're 15, which is the earliest I think you can be a professional Rocket League player, so many of them are signed at about that age, but they're still at school. And so you've still got to be able to fit in schoolwork and do all these other things too. So if they were looking at scrims for maybe 12 to 15 hours a week, that would be reasonable to fit in with schoolwork. But if you were an older adult, perhaps you might want to be looking for more. So you'd probably be looking for 16 to 20 hours a week of scrims. And then we're looking at theory on top. And so it's maybe 1.5 to 2 hours of theory each week as well. And this is with your time commitment with the team. So this is the minimum of what you're looking for. And then in your own time, you've got VOD reviews, strat creation, and lineups. And so you practice these in ranked in your own time. So this is on top. So at least 3 to 4 hours. Would that sort of, you'd probably do more.
No, so in my mind, in my thinking, you will not be a good player if you're not putting in at least 30, 40 hours a week, minimum.
Right, so I can't put that.
I think you've got 12, 15.
No, I've got 16 and 20 plus 2 is 22, another 4, 20,
close.
28. We're getting close. We're getting close. You'd probably put in more ranked stuff, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how you fit it all in. All right, so let's have a look at VOD reviews, because this is a really important part of learning as a player. So there's different types of VOD reviews that you can do. Was that something you did a lot of, Julian, for your Because yeah.
Absolutely. I think there is nothing better than being able to observe how you've performed and look back at it and critique it, find the issues, find the improvements and try and implement them. You must observe, tweak and fix, otherwise you can never improve. It's an absolute must.
What proportion would you have been doing of you're looking at your own play versus looking at play of others?
Probably 50-50, I would say.
Interesting. Okay, so let's just talk about some of these observations we've got with VOD reviews. Credit to Zotek, who is one of my coaches in North America in Valorant. He's come with a podcast. He's definitely worth following if you haven't seen his work before. He's a great coach and has some great ideas. But he did a podcast recently on VOD reviews, and I'm stealing some of his content here. So the first type of VOD review I want to talk about is the personal one, where you're looking to see, you've recorded your own game, and you're looking to see what things you might want to fix in your own game. So the thing I want to talk about here is not to be upset at every single mistake you make, because you're going to make gazillions of mistakes. Let's not be focused on those. You might want to look at what things you did right. There's a change, something positive. And maybe just look at the ones that are the major errors. And they're the ones you might want to concentrate on mostly. But personal VOD reviews actually are very handy to work out what things you can actually change and fix up for next time. Then we've got research-oriented VOD reviews, and these are ones where we look to see pro players, particularly in the style that you play in or the role that you play in. You're looking to see how they move around the map, what they do to support their teammates. And in this case though, we're missing a little bit of context, because obviously when you're watching the matches, we don't get the chance to hear the comms. So we don't know, what the circumstances are surrounding the decisions they're making are. And so maybe a better suggestion here is to watch the pro players when they stream, because at least they're verbalizing what their decision making is based on and reacting to their teammates.
Yeah, I'd say with the research-oriented VOD review, if possible, and I know it's not an option for a lot of people, but if it is possible, if you can pair up with get a coach or become friends with a pro player and have them assist you do the VOD reviews of other pros, because there's a lot of context in there that people won't understand. So they'll see something happening and take the wrong idea or the wrong thing about what they're seeing and try and implement it, and of course it's not going to work. And the other thing as well is, there's an old saying that a pro knows when to break the rules. And you'll see when you're watching a lot of professional VOD reviews, they're actually deliberately doing the wrong thing to capitalise on an opponent who won't expect that. So if you're emulating that, of course it's not going to work if you haven't done the preparation for that to work at your level.
Yep, thanks Julian, that's a good point. Alright, so then we've got the anti-stratting one. So I've got a team at the moment who's doing some anti-stratting on, they've got an official tomorrow night, and it's very important for them to work out the play style of the team they're playing against and what their tendencies are. And so it's a very strategic sort of VOD review. It's quite a quick one. You might go through a bit quicker to see in fast time.
So I'd say the anti-stratting one is quite interesting. So that's sort of looking at, you've got a big match coming up, you see who your opponent is, you watch their demos or VODs and find their tendencies and come up with a plan deliberately to exploit them. A little bit controversial in my teams, but we would never do that. It was a strict no. And the reason why is because that will give you fast results, it won't necessarily give you good results. And so what I mean by that is it's sort of like investing, where you have a lot of volatility. You go up and you'll go down. What I'm interested in is the repeatable and expected performance. I don't want our teams to go in and beat a team that we shouldn't be beating, or lose to a team that we should be beating. And when you're anti-stratting, you're not playing your own game. I want a system that is good and it's repeatable and gives predictable outcomes so that we can improve it over time. So we would never do that in our teams.
Good point. I think the reason why anti-stratting sometimes can be useful is if you at least see the tendencies of the other team, you can at least know what to expect.
Oh, at the absolute peak, for sure, you should be anti-stratting, but we weren't there, so.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so then passive absorption is one that Zotek recommended, where you would watch the pro players play, and you would put your own hands on your keyboard and mouse and imagine yourself to be like them, And at key moments of the VOD, you might stop and guess what they might do next, how they might react. Where are they going to be? How would they be moving around the map? So that in that way, you're trying to emulate this pro player in particular. I haven't seen that work a lot. Well, have you ever tried that?
No, it's a really interesting concept. It's sort of like visualization. I would for sure give it a go if I was playing again. Mm-hmm. I mean, I watched a lot of CS. I love CS, so for me that would be the passive absorption, watching professional matches constantly, but not to that depth.
Right. And then comms VODs. I love comms VODs because I want to hear what's happening in the team and why they're making the decisions they're making. So again, we can pause and listen to, because you have a bit more information now. You've got information on, what your team is thinking and how they might be reacting. So comms VODs I think are fantastic. You can do the deep VOD review where you're looking for one particular thing and you're skimming through the VOD reviews, looking for maybe pistol rounds or, I don't know, how you might play against a particular player or something along those lines. So you're looking for one particular thing. It might only occur 3 or 4 times in a whole map, and it just is a faster way of learning. It's a very deep way of learning, and it can be an efficient use of time. And lastly, you can just watch a VOD for fun. I don't do that. Anyway.
I love the comp VODs actually. So what that is when we played, and it was one of the things Michelle suggested was to record our team communication, we'd review them afterwards. And for me that provides accountability, because quite often you'd have in game in the heat of the moment, oh, I needed this to happen, and someone would say, oh, you never said that. Check the VOD, we can prove it.
We've got evidence, that's right, it is good from that point of view. Yeah, because people in the heat, you're right, in the heat of the moment, people think they heard it, or maybe they didn't hear it and it was said. So you can check the VOD and see. One of the things I find quite interesting as a psychologist is, in the heat of the moment there, one of the things I get my team to do is to use first name at the start of a direction. So if you're calling, your teammate to do something for you, if you use their name, Julian, come and do this, he's more likely to hear you and respond to the direction, as opposed to if you give the direction first and their name at the last, they'll hear their name but they'll miss the direction. So you want to be able to get their attention in the first way. So this is just a way that's easier psychologically. You're tuned to picking up your own name, so it's just a better system to talk to your teammates. All right. Rules for teams. Again, Zotek was a coach, was very influential on me, and he had these 2 rules for teams. He said you had to do the work and you had to be a good teammate, and if you didn't do those 2 things, you were out. And so it makes you very accountable. When I come onto a team and I talk to them about these two rules, I ask each team, what's the culture here? What does doing the work actually mean for this team? And I want to find out, what are the expectations? Because often it's one of those things that no one actually talks about. They don't really say, oh, we're expecting to do this. People just do the amount of work they're used to doing, but that may not be the right amount. So we have an actual discussion about, okay, what does doing the work look like for you? And then being a good teammate is crucial. So plenty of times I've been on teams where there's players. I think one of the things that causes teams to fall apart is where one teammate thinks they're doing lots more work than everybody else. And so we want to make sure that everyone knows what work everyone is doing, that we're creating positive vibes, everyone's responsible for bringing their own right energy, just doing things easy to make life easier for your teammates. That's what being a good teammate's all about.
Yeah, just on that, I find it interesting because it's an element that's sort of not touched on at school even. People will have aspirations of becoming a CEO or being a top competitor in a top team in esports, and in my opinion, people focus, they think in their mind, in order to get to those positions, I need to be the best at my craft. I need to be the best shooter, I need to be the best financial manager, whatever it is. Absolutely, that's wrong. And anyone who's gotten a bit older will look around at their workforce and think, how's that person there? I'm way better than them, and they've got all the promotions. And it's the be a good teammate is first and foremost, will get you further in life in any field than being technically excellent. So if you want to compete at the top in the team, focus on being a good teammate and focus on being a person that people want to have
As
in
a
the
teammate,
team.
yeah. I've worked with a player overseas who was on an academy side, one of the very biggest teams in Tier 1, and had a reputation for back-chatting the coach and not being a good teammate. And he was kicked off the team, and even now he finds it hard, like it's nearly 6 or 7 years later. His reputation has preceded him, he's finding it hard to be on teams, and esports is a small world, you can't afford to muck things up. So being a good teammate is crucial. It's one of the things that people look for when you're playing ranked together and you get a chance to mix it up with other people. They'll notice when you're being a good teammate. Anyway, I do want to show everyone, this is how our debrief document looks. So this one's actually a Rocket League team. Hopefully it's good enough to big enough to see on the screen. So I have on the left-hand side dates and our scores, our results for our scrims, and each person. So we've spoken about the need for open and honest communication. So this is really important. What I do at the end of scrims is before anyone talks or does anything, we just jump onto this scrim document, this debrief document. Everyone fills it in. So it's changed a little bit since we worked together. I've just narrowed it down to 2 columns. So team performance and own performance. We give a rating out of 10. And it's just totally subjective for that person. We don't actually even discuss it. But I want to know what their thoughts are as to how the team played that scrim and how they played themselves. And then they give the scores, and then in the notes section, the next column with all the writing in it, this is the part that they keep hidden. So that they jump into the notes cell and they type up what they want to say about all the things that went well and the things that didn't go quite so well or we want to fix up. And they type it all up, and then when everyone is finished doing their typing, we say, okay, ready, set, go, hit enter, and now suddenly all the cells get revealed. And the reason I do it this way is to make sure that A, everyone has a voice, and B, they're not being influenced by what their teammates think. I want to know what each player thinks themselves. What suggestions have they got for the team to improve? So once all the writing is revealed, we then take it in turns to discuss one at a time what is discussed on in the notes. So you don't have to read it out word for word. You can just talk about the gist of it. But we want to get a sense of, okay, what's working and what's not working. And if a player comes up and says, in these circumstances, something's not working, I can't put my finger on it, I don't know what to do, the team will talk about, and I've cut it off a little bit here on the far right, is a solution cell. And the team will work out what the solution is. Or maybe the player themselves has the issue during the game and they've worked out what the solution is and they want to put the solution in the solution box themselves. That's fine too. But the team discusses this one by one. They go through, usually the IGL and the coach are done last, because they often have the most to say, and often the players who are, they might be a bit quieter often, so we want to hear from, or even the quiet ones. And it just makes sure that everyone, we're hearing from everybody. And so, by having the debrief document done each night after scrims, it means that we're constantly improving and all the players are seeing for themselves that everyone's invested in improving as well. And that's the important part. Because as I said to you, where you've got players who think that they're the only ones doing the work and others are not, here you can actually see, okay, well everyone actually is invested and they're doing the work, and it's very apparent. And so from the solutions, we might then come up with some goals to look at the next day's scrims and try and fix our little problems. And in this way, we're just fixing small issues before they become big ones. We don't want to get to the unpacking the backpack one, which is quite a bloody sort of affair where there's a major issue we haven't addressed and it's a real problem.
So I was just going to say, for me, the most important thing, or the most insightful thing, is actually the numerical score that you put on there. And I'll tell you why, in my opinion. So it's extremely important in Australian culture. I would say that Australians will vote with their feet. And what I mean by that is, everything's going well, you have a great team environment, everyone's happy, and randomly one of your star players will say, I'm out, can't do this anymore. And it comes out of nowhere. I thought everything was going well, what's the problem? Or another example, how many, especially the Australians, have been at a restaurant, the food's come out, it's average, didn't really enjoy it, the service was terrible, the waiter comes out, here's the bill, how was it? Oh, it was lovely, thank you very much. You pay the bill, I'm never going there again. That is very much an Australian thing. People won't give honest feedback. It's sort of bad in our culture. So when you force people to put a numerical ranking in there, you can see what the anomaly is. So imagine you have a practice match, you've competed against a top team, you've never beaten them before. You absolutely smashed them out of the water. Everything's great, everyone's high spirits. You look at the feedback, debrief, 10, 10, 10, 10, one player's put a 1. You automatically know there's an issue there, why have you got a 1? Well, we said we wanted to practice this strat, and the IGL never called it once, so we just wasted our scrim session. We beat the top team, but we've just wasted the time. You actually brought to surface an issue that was bubbling away that would have never been asked about if there wasn't an opportunity to bring it to surface in this way.
Come on, Jules, don't say that, no notes.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Oh, come on, they would, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I use the numerical stuff, not to discuss in the scrim, but I use it in case a player is actually personally not performing well. I want to follow up with them privately afterwards to find out if there's anything I can do to help them. Maybe they're having a bad time at work, or maybe they're just snowed under with other commitments, or who knows what the reason is, but I want to make sure that they're all right. I haven't thought of it that way before though. That's interesting. Alright, so I want to ask if there's any questions from anybody. Is there anything that's been raised that we haven't answered that is a burning question for you? Let's be open and honest and give us some feedback, please. The microphone is just over here if you want to stand up and tell us your experiences of being on a team and...
Esports, business, looking for a team, starting a team, raising funding,
We've got
the whole shebang.
Anyone with any questions? If we have no questions, oh, yep, go ahead.
Go on, I'll give it a try one, sorry. I come from a traditional sporting background, and obviously previously in the 80s, authoritarian style coaching definitely got results, but you obviously saw a lot of athletes fall by the wayside, presenting the sport injuries and whatnot. I'm wondering whether you believe there could be some sort of an implementation where instead of it being authoritarian style, it's maybe a bit more given like the athlete, well, in my instance, the athletes are given more autonomy and they can make those decisions themselves and they can learn to become a better leader. Do you ever provide those instances for your players in any way where you give them some autonomy and they can make decisions whether it's successful or not, but they learn from those?
Do you want to go or I can say yes?
Please do, because I couldn't hear it.
So I would say absolutely, but it depends on what your priority is, and it's the same in business as well. So sometimes I'll have companies that come to me and look for a culture change, and I'll always say, what is your priority? Are you looking for the best results over the long term, or are you looking for a quick win? If you're looking for a quick win, absolutely, in my opinion. So when I say quick win in terms of business, it will be, we're facing financial difficulties, we'll be out of business soon, we don't have enough money, we need to turn this ship around fast. Versus we have a good business and we want to outcompete over the long run. So the same in sports as well. Are you looking for a quick win? Like, is it a must that your team places in the top 3 within the next 2 seasons? Or are we looking to be a top contender and breed the next generation, have a good environment over the long term? Those are 2 different issues that will need different leadership styles, for sure. One, in my opinion, is better than the other. Of course, winning over the long term is best. But it is hard to get buy-in and support for people who are going to be with you on that journey when you're failing to deliver in the short term. So it's just a balance of those 2.
Thank you. Thanks, Phil. All right, anyone other questions? Otherwise we're winding up our panel. Thank you very much for your attendance, everybody. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the weekend. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, everyone.